Hello guys. So in a continuation with the atomic structure, now we are going to discuss a very important concept, that is Bohr's atomic structure. Niels Bohr was the scientist who has introduced the planetary model of atom. Now he used the Planck's quantum theory and he used some of the concepts which are very helpful to explain the arrangement of electrons around the nucleus. At the same time, he could explain the discontinuous nature of spectra. Now, why we are getting discontinuous spectrum, how the electron get excited, what is the meaning of absorption and emission spectra, all this thing he has explained by considering hydrogen atom. Means he consider one electron system, that is hydrogen, and he explained the structure of hydrogen atom. He has proposed some of the postulates, and those postulates are really important to understand the structure of atom. At the same time, it gives a new foundation for the structure of atom, that is, electrons are always revolving in a certain selected orbit. So the concept of orbit, the concept of shell was introduced by Niels Bohr. So we will go one by one, some of the postulates. So the postulates for Bohr's theory. Bohr's theory for structure of atom. Electrons are revolving around the nucleus. This was the concept which was given by Rutherford also. But according to Bohr, yes, electrons are revolving around the nucleus, but they are revolving in a certain selected orbit, fixed orbit. And he named those orbit as a stationary orbit. So he introduced the concept of stationary orbit, means the orbit is fixed. In that fixed imaginary circular path, the electrons are revolving. As long as the electrons are revolving in that stationary orbit, it never loses energy. It never loses energy. As long as electrons are revolving in a circular path, it never loses its energy. Means certain fixed amount of energy is associated with those shells, the stationary orbits. Therefore, those stationary orbits are also called as main energy levels or principal energy levels, and that introduce the shell concept, number of shells concept. So these are the two important concepts which was given by Niels Bohr. The first one, the concept of stationary orbit. Electrons are revolving around the nucleus in a certain fixed shell circular path, and as long as the electrons are revolving in that shell, it never loses its energy. Therefore, it is called as stationary orbit. Second point, certain fixed amount of energy is associated with each stationary shell, and therefore it is also called as principal energy level or main energy level. So stationary orbit is also called as principal energy level, energy shell, or we also call it as a main energy level. Orbit. So as I mentioned here, as long as the electrons are revolving in that stationary path, it never loses energy. But electron can lose energy. When electron jumps from one energy level to another energy level. Means if it is moving from lower energy orbit to higher energy orbit, it has to absorb energy, or if it is coming from higher energy orbit to lower energy orbit, then it should lose energy. So, that energy which is absorbed or emitted is quantized. Quantized means it is in the form of quantum. So, that will be our third point. Electron lose its energy when it jumps from one energy level to another energy level. Okay. So, loss or gain of energy only when electron jumps from one energy level, or that is shell, to the another shell. And this is a very important concept, because the concept of absorption and emission spectra lying in this postulate. So, that energy is equal to the energy difference between the two energy shells, two energy levels. So, that will be our fourth point. So, let us consider delta E, that is the amount of energy absorbed or evolved, is equal to E2 minus E1. E2 energy of second shell, E1 energy of first shell, then that is h nu, quantized. That is quantized. Okay. So, this energy, if we are talking about if energy electron is jump from first shell to second shell, then the electron absorbs energy, and if it is coming from second shell to first shell, then it emits energy. So, this is the new concept. Now, the question is, why electron is revolving in a certain selected orbit? The answer is given by NEET Board. Obviously, he has considered a single electron, therefore he could explain it in a very nice way. What he is saying, as long as electrons are revolving in a circular path, they have certain angular momentum, and that angular momentum is integral multiples of h upon 2 pi. This is one value. H is a Planck's constant and 2 pi. So, this value derived from Planck's quantum theory. So, according to him, angular momentum mvr, mass of the electron, velocity of the electron and radius of curvature, is equal to integral n multiples of h upon 2 pi, where h is a Planck's constant. Now, what are the values of n? Where the values of n are from 1, 2, 3 and so on, where n represent number of shell. Means when I am saying n is equal to 1, first shell. So, n is equal to 1, this implies first shell. So, what is the angular momentum of electron present in the first shell? mvr is equal to h upon 2 pi. If you are talking about second shell, then angular momentum is twice the h upon 2 pi. Means if the electron is coming from second shell to first shell, it cannot come directly. because that electron has not that angular momentum. So how can it achieve? By losing energy. So this is a very important concept again. Now, by considering these postulates, Rutherford could able to derive certain formulas, certain relations. He could able to find the radius of orbit. He could able to determine energy associated with that. He could able to determine the velocity, and he has given certain relations with velocity, radius, energy, number of shells, etc., etc. Also, some of the scientists like Rydberg and Neil Bohr, Bohr, these scientists also had given some spectra, the interpretation of certain spectrum. So how there are ultraviolet rays, visible region, far region. So how those radiations are lying and how are they originating. So all that explained by using Bohr's concept. So this is all about Bohr's theory. So what we have to remember over here, we have to remember this one, delta E, that is energy difference is equal to h nu, and this thing we have to remember. Okay. Now, even if this theory was foolproof that time and it has a various calculation, rather Bohr could able to explain, as I already told you, that the structure of hydrogen atom, the structure of monoelectronic system could able to explain by Neil Bohr, but it had certain drawbacks. So what are the drawbacks? The drawbacks are, the first drawback, that it cannot be applied to the multi-electron atom. This theory we cannot apply to multi-electron atom. It's very simple thing. If we consider the angular momentum, assume, let us consider angular momentum, or let us consider this concept. Now we are talking about if the energy is absorbed by an electron which is present in a first shell. Obviously, if there is another electron, what happens with that electron could not be explained by Neil Bohr. It's a very simple concept. So as soon as we add another electron, the complexity increases, and that complexity was not explained by Neil Bohr. So no explanation for multi-electron atom. Okay, no proper explanation. For multi-electron atom. So this is first drawback. Second drawback. Now we know from this we can get the idea how we are getting discontinuous spectrum. But if we use a high resolving analyzer, and if we pass one band, one color to that high resolving analyzer, it is observed that that light is also further splitted into closely spaced lines. Means we have certain bright bands against the dark background. Now, how was that splitting? Was not explained by Neil Bohr. Means he could explain the discontinuity of the spectrum, but the perfect discontinuous spectrum was not properly explained by Neil Bohr. So here the second point, discontinuous. spectrum was not properly explained by Bohrs theory. Third point, when atomic source of a radiation are passed through electric field, then what will happen, that line, the radiations which are coming from an atom in an electric field, those radiations get splitted further. Same way as we are discussing in a second point. Here we are using high resolving analyzer, but that we can easily observe if we use electric field. So that discontinuous nature under the influence of electric field is called as Stark's effect. So that was not explained by Bohr. Similarly, if we pass that atomic source of a radiation through magnetic field, again there is a splitting of lines. So that is also not explained, and that effect is called as Zeeman effect. Now, we are dealing with orbits over here, but there are certain, when we are proceeding further, orbits contain certain orbitals. So here the effect, these two effects are explaining why there is the existence of orbital subshell concept. So that we can explain on the basis of this. But this concept, the concept of subshell, was not introduced by NEET Board. Then, since he was dealing with single electron, he could not explain proper arrangement of electron in the atom. No explanation for proper arrangement of electrons in the atom. So these are certain drawbacks associated with Bohrs theory. Now, in the next session we will be discussing about the relation between radius and number of shells, atomic number, or rather we will derive some of the formulas for radius, energy of the electron, velocity of the electron and so on by using Bohrs theory.